The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Yes, another hump day is upon us. This is the brand new latest edition of the Foxy and Squid show. And unfortunately, our lovely Foxy is slightly under the weather. So, you are with the Squid, captaining the ship once again. Gonna be a rather quirky, rather crazy journey tonight. But I will say this, two things. Most of tonight's episode is going to be a little heavy. I will explain as I get further along. But if you're good, and especially you listen all the way to the end, I have a little treat in store for the last segment of the show. Especially if everything technologically cooperates, which it's been touch and go, but we'll just play that by ear. I want to start tonight, like seemingly I've had to start a lot of podcasts and podcast preparations with my famous topic in life, Conundrums. This is pretty famous because it is all-encompassing on the variety of shows if you listen to my dulcet tones on the W2M network, but me being me, looking at it from my perspective, and if you get the general gist of it, you could say that conundrums are infamous. I completely understand. In recent days, I've actually taken a bit of a look at myself. My relationships, my situations with women, how much money I've thrown down in some cases, the overall benefits, etc., etc. And I realize, to an extent, what I'm doing to myself and how I get into these conundrums, how they evolve and how I define them. So, of all times while driving, and then while sitting home, I just realized I need to change some things and just kind of evaluate each one kind of base by base. So, thankfully, in a surprisingly clear-headed moment, I have. And I realized I'm not in as many conundrums as I think. Right now, I'm at about 1.5. Now, granted, after having an interesting weekend going out, seeing my friend perform, doing a belly dance act, which was awesome, me getting involved, which was also awesome, seeing a little burlesque, it made it worth the fact that I somehow mysteriously lost a $10 bill, which I'm still a little bit pissed about, I'm not gonna lie. But seeing that, being with friends, dealing with a quasi-friend who really just likes to brag about how he does all kinds of photography for naked women and won't do jack shit for me for hooking up, I realized, well, maybe his life is a bit more pathetic than mine after all. That and parking behind a checker on the street. Yes, I took pictures. And does anybody know how to track down owners based upon certain plates? If you do, hit me up at Squid Sportshead. I might have a favor to ask because the car itself, I could tell it wasn't in the best condition. But to me, it seemed like the current owner wasn't treating it right. And if I could find the owner, maybe start a conversation about a potential sale, get my foot in the door, that could work wonders for my life. But I digress. After that weekend and after these past days, my situation with conundrums is actually a little bit better. It was 5-4, some fractions mixed in, and then had to break out a whiteboard, pro, con, what this person said, what I said, this amount of money, this Snapchat, this Peaks app, these perks, these incentives, whatever. I was able to boil a lot of things down. And thanks to a lot of this cleansing, if you will, I realized that I'm really only in 1.5. Which for me, that's a record low. And yes, I say that's a record low because I've always been in some sort of conundrum when it turns to women, so I really can't include the few times that it's been 0, because those are just statistical outliers. But during this cleansing, I've been speaking to my friend, which happens to be my primary conundrum and the source of a lot of things. Her name's Libby, a very sweet woman. I've known her for about a year now. Things are awesome. But one of the things that in her conversations with me is about thinking positive, keeping things positive, putting out a lot of good vibes in the universe, which I try to do. Normally I'm very successful, but me being a mathematical, analytical mind, as good as it is in helping me teach a subject that I never even dealt with, even as a graduate student, it also brings about what some of the more famous mathematicians have described as a curse. You see life in patterns, you see histories, you see trends, and a mind like mine takes those trends and does predictive analysis and projections about what will happen. And I base my emotions on that, which, to try to turn my brain off of that sense, that's why I like to go out, see things, do things, have a drink, get stoned, whatever, whenever the possibility arises. But a lot of times, I have to do that more because trends are bad. Circling back to with Libby. Things are usually great. Counting down. She coming down to visit me. Times are good. But then out of nowhere, something happens. I'm getting strange pictures, which, for the sake of dinner conversation, I will not disclose. Plus, she would probably kill me anyways. Or something happens with her family, illnesses, things with her car, and I accept that these are things that are completely out of her control, out of my control, but after a while, it kind of dulls the enthusiasm. So, I take it an opportunity to play things as it lies. Well, unfortunately, with this past week, she's had a bit of a case of the flu, but is recovering. Things are going well, and I'm thinking, hey, this could finally be the time. All of a sudden, I wake up this very morning. I get a message from her saying, call me ASAP. So I wonder what's going on. I see messages, and out of nowhere, a tree falls right smack dab on her house. And it is a gigantic fucking tree. We're talking a good 30, 40 feet. Thankfully, no one was hurt. It was a major blessing. Everyone got out. But the house, Red Cross, everyone came in. It's condemned. That thing is gone bye-bye. And seeing the pictures for myself, I'm thinking, yes, that's a major problem. So, right when things were starting to swing upwards, this happens. Everything's gone. Her and her family, her mom, her brothers are trying to work to salvage everything, get themselves together, at the very least temporarily. I mention this because I want to do more than just put out good vibes in the universe. Now, again, my Twitter, @SquidSportsHead. I want everybody listening, be it live or replay, to keep an eye out on that Twitter, because I'm speaking with her. She's trying to set up a fund, I would assume GoFundMe, to try to raise money so she and her family can at least get back on their feet temporarily before they get a more permanent solution, which things are already thankfully preliminarily in the works. I want to try to do what I can. Naturally, of course, as opportunity allows, I'm going to pitch in a few dollars, but I want to give a kind of sneak preview, so when you see the tweet, when I put the word out, I want you to make a good case. So, if you see the situation for her 4 kids, yes, I know dating someone with kids can be tricky, but when you're me, and, well, she's the reason why I haven't masturbated, at least on purpose, for the past 3 months, and yes, she knows, you can understand where my head is at. But, aside from what I want to do and my involvement with this, think about her. Wonderful person, works as hard as she can. She's got 2 jobs, taking care of 4 young kids. She does have support from her family, like I mentioned, but still. I know people rag on GoFundMe and rag on the people that use it, but if you've got some kind of kindness in your heart and in your wallet, throw a few bucks when you see this. Trust me, they're going to make a compelling visual argument. I know that, but just keep it in somewhat the middle of your minds. At least for me. Help a squid out, you know? So, begging, imploring, do whatever. Help her out as much as you can. Every dollar, everything helps something, and then all I'll say is I'll guarantee you everybody will win in that situation, myself included at the end. So, hearing all of this and seeing all of these images of the trees and things, it got me thinking, not just the evolution of this conundrum, which started many, many moons ago through Periscope, of all places, but kind of how I see things, looking in the depths of my mathematical mind, because through the tragedy, I saw that I was right. I didn't want to be right. I did my best to be proven wrong. But things that happen just prove me right. No matter how twisted my belief system can appear, different energies, invisible hands, guiding forces, higher powers, all lumped together, some scientific, some not, but based on all of these things, the pattern proved itself. And I'm thinking, and I even expressed this to her, if this pattern proves itself, what does that mean? I've tried letting her know. She gets it, although it's been kind of quizzical. And I'm sure we're going to have another talk about this. But whenever things are happening and it's on a precipice for the things of 2 of us, not only have things happened in a negative, but they become increasingly negative. And now this impact is even wider. So I have to look at myself, at this conundrum, and my relationship with her anew. It's not going to be comfortable. I don't expect it to be. But I've already got issues in my conspiracies about the universe being out to get me, and why some things have gone well, some haven't, and how I'm fortunate enough to be working with Sean and everybody at the W2M network, but why I still haven't gotten laid in nearly 2 years. It's ebb and flow. It's these patterns. When I focus on certain things and certain energies, everything is fantastic. When I focus on others, it fails miserably. Is there anything that I can sort of trick in any of this? Is what I also wonder. Can I use my belief system to fool the universe? Can I prove something extra about the universe that I haven't seen? Is there something about this that I can do to turn the tide in my favor 100% and keep it that way? These are things that I think about, and these are things that I'm going to keep thinking about, and I hope at some point I'll have an answer. I would like to have an answer. I'm desperate for an answer, looking for one, because clock's ticking for me. A couple months from now, I'll be 31, and while a lot of my history is good, some aspects are stagnant, and some are just practically non-existent. Is it wrong with something that I believe? Is there signs that I'm missing? Are there signs that I caught that I shouldn't have? Signs that I missed that I shouldn't have? What's going on? Now, granted, I realize that being existential doesn't necessarily go 100% for me, and I'm nowhere near inebriated enough to really put things together and see the universe through more than two eyes, but for now, this is what I got. Still having issues with legality and weed in this state, and unfortunately, that's not going to change because of red tape and bureaucracy and gold government at state level favoring this and that, thanks to a governor that is, I'm pretty sure, looks like a human form of an albino snake that wound up buying his way to two terms. So there are a lot of things stacked up against myself and those close to my shoes, maybe one size off, but people of my ilk and others in similar situations. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll just wake up one morning and realize that this whole time I was talking out of my ass, and I meet this ginger that I fantasize about, who sometimes in my mind dresses up like a cat, complete with a tail. Okay, I better shut up before that goes on into a whole other tangent, and again, I'm still sober. That being out of the way, thank you for listening to my desperate pitch and kind of the mind of the squid, at least for a little bit. You've made it through phase 1. You're doing good, kid. Now, phase 2. Politics. If you listen to past episodes of Foxy and Squid, you know basically who I was rooting for and who I voted for in this past election. Well, unfortunately, Joe Exotic didn't do as well as I would have liked, and thanks to a bunch of presumably Russians, quite possibly helped by a Brit of all things, hiding behind keyboards, we have a human form of a very angry Cheeto in office, which, in one of his latest nicknames, which I'm very fond of, Kim Shrunk Dong. Because, I mean, if your penis most likely looks like a Cheeto, you would be angry too. And when the rest of you looks like another Cheeto with a much smaller Cheeto protruding from that, yeah, you don't wake up with a very happy feeling most days. Well, said man with the questionable blonde hair has really been up to some old tricks over the past slightly less than 2 months. One story that, oddly enough, I knew about, that was mentioned, but hasn't been mentioned yet, or really since, is the debt ceiling. This is something I'm a little bit passionate about because pretty much ever since we've been a country, we've been in debt based upon trade deficits, wars, tax revenues, you name it. It's actually a very complicated system, but over time, and especially in recent years, we've hit what's the debt ceiling. Think about it as the company's credit card being maxed out. Now, whenever this happens, the president signs to extend the debt ceiling, usually for several months. The credit company is nice enough to give us an extension. And over the past few administrations, this has happened about 60 some odd times, almost 70. Well, for the first time under 45's watch, our credit card's been maxed out. Today's the big day that we hit the debt ceiling. Now, one of two things could happen. Either 45 follows form, signs a bill to extend the debt ceiling, or buys us some more time. Or he doesn't. If he decides to extend, it's the status quo. We get some time, work out some deals, pay our bills, make some payments, even though, really, thanks to W, we haven't been able to really do that, which is what happens when you put not one but two wars on a credit card. Been pretty much erasing everything that Clinton did, which, admittedly, through sketchy economic regulatory means, still paid down the deficit. It was a net win at that time, but turns out a decade later, we were fucked. If you want to get a brief lesson on that, I highly suggest you watch The Big Short. Very good movie, very well done. So, between the Muslim ban, which the first iteration got shot down, the second iteration, thanks to the state of Hawaii, is in court again. Thanks to issues with Russia, Trump pretty much bending over on the desk in the Oval Office while Putin steps off his horse, unzips his pants, drops trowel, and goes in dry. This kind of got lost in the shuffle. And this is just as big of an impact as anything else, because we decide not to even seek an extension or raise the debt ceiling. It gets to a point we can't pay our bills. And we owe a lot of people, thanks to wars, thanks to trade. China's been holding the purse strings for years. And I'm of the mindset that if things happen where they get pissed off, which has been happening a lot lately, they'll be very happy to raid Fort Knox after giving us a quick phone call and say, hey, we're calling in our debt. We economically would be screwed. Stock market crash, hyperinflation. There are a lot of doomsday scenarios potentially on the table, especially in an economic sense. That story completely disappeared. Now, go back to 3 years ago, when you had the Tea Party and all these Republicans running upon saying, we're broke, we gotta cut spending, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. Everybody was talking about it. But now when the opportunity is anew, and the shoe's somewhat on the other foot, Democrats have been shockingly silent, not forcing the issue. Republicans certainly have enough to deal with, not forcing the issue. Nobody's forcing the issue. The day could go by, as is. It's already late. If you're listening live, it's almost 10 o'clock. If you're listening to replay, that bit's slightly irrelevant. The day could go by, and there could be nothing. Now, unless something happens under the cover of darkness, and it's slipped through and completely dismissed by everyone, and I don't know about it, which, given the current climate, could easily happen, this could be starting a rather unfriendly chain of dominoes that I don't think we as a whole are really prepared for. no matter what the dealings are with insurance or the stock market or the uber wealthy building their supposed bunkers, nobody's predicted economic apocalypse. Which, if you think about it, the way our system is set up, the way how if you even touch a dollar bill, you're instantly in debt, all these things occur. It's the most likely scenario, the biggest elephant in the room, that everybody's just sitting around talking about something else. Now, granted, I know 45's ties to Putin and Russia, especially going in dry repeatedly, and needless to say, I don't think Putin would be the kind of guy to wear rubber in this situation, which 45 doesn't seem to mind whatsoever, given how he talks about him. Look, okay, that's between them, but would you do that in private? You don't run for president. You don't decide to say, hey, I can find a billionaire to back me and not submit taxes and do all this stuff and say whatever and be my reality persona and get in the White House. You really don't think of these things if you're not prepared. At least, you would assume sane people wouldn't. And you would hope that people who think of these things would maybe question their sanity. And if they don't, other people would. And in this case, they have. Reports have come out. Things have been published. So there's that. Then all of a sudden, you get this bombshell, taxes. Now, as someone who is authorized to prepare taxes, authorized to charge people to prepare taxes, I know a thing or two about the tax code. When I saw the report about the 2 pages of the 2005 return, the different incomes, the writing of a loss related to construction and all this and that, I automatically thought to myself, that's 2 key pages. That it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if Trump decided to just put in the mailbox and leak himself. Or his so-called PR people that he used as aliases back in the day. John Miller, John Bannon, what have you. But nevertheless, they're out. But I looked at it, and I'm thinking, there's more even to this return. He would have to have this schedule for this income, and this schedule for depreciation for construction equipment and buildings and this, and then this statement for this income and this schedule and all this and that. You're talking 10 to 20 different forms, and at least 100, if not hundreds, of pages for this one return. It's a CPA's dream because this one return, it could be charged in the thousands. And looking just at the numbers themselves, yes, he paid the alternative minimum tax, which, if you're one of the hyper wealthy, the 1% or 0.1%, you have to pay a certain percentage of your income in taxes. Otherwise, you could use all kinds of breaks and loopholes and read through every line of the tax code and wind up paying next to nothing, or in crazier instances, get a refund. But he paid, and that got me to thinking, if this was his best year tax-wise, which that's why it's out, because it is, what are his worst? Let me see how he was doing in 99 and 2000 with the dot-com bubble. Let me see what he was doing 07, 08, 09, 10 in the recession. See what he was doing 87, 88, 89, 90, stock market crash in those recessions. What was he doing then? What's he been doing since? This is a fantastic nugget, but all it did was whet my appetite. And hearing the media, seeing all these things reported, I'm hoping other appetites are whet as well. Because this is a lovely little dot that I want to connect. I'm glad I have this dot. I'm glad that this singular point exists. But I want to see the other points. This can't just be the only point on the plane. I have a great start, but I'm hungry. Hungry because I know for this start, there's so much more behind it. Once you start connecting more and more dots, other people getting involved. Russian oligarchs, people who were Russian oligarchs who own jets that have been seen and photographed right next to 45's jet at sites of campaign rallies. I'd like to know, is Putin the only one bending him over? Is he the only one going in dry? And where's everybody else finishing? Are there even more golden showers involved? This is what I want to know. And I hope a lot of other people do too. If all this wasn't bad enough, if you weren't just sick of the ban, or had no clue about the debt ceiling, which is okay if you didn't, or didn't all this about the taxes, you have Paul Ryan's wet dream. So eager to roll up his sleeves and do a nice long PowerPoint. Finally discussing and trying to enact something that he's been thinking of and crafting in that puny Wisconsin blue-eyed brain of his since he was Mitt Romney's running mate back in 2012. Healthcare. He said, through all the cheese in his mouth, I'm going to gut it. I am taking entitlements. If you're middle class, or if you're poor, or if you're whatever, I'm not giving a fuck about you. Plain and simple. Back in 2012, he was stopped. But now, thanks to people behind the keyboard and some rather suspicious electoral college results, here he is, and even more power than before. And God only knows if Trump is impeached, he's thrown out, then Ryan would have even more power, getting the bump up to being vice president without having to lift a finger, which is a scary thought in itself. But he's there, waving in the air this supposedly beautiful, magical 60-page plan, as Sean Spicer displayed in a daily press briefing, that is the American Health Care Act. A lot of people are calling it Obamacare 2.0, Obamacare Light, Trump Care, Ryan Care, Tryon Care, Wealth Care. I've heard even Express Train to Jesus plan, Hope You Die in Your Sleep plan. Whatever clever nickname you want to call it, it's out there. It exists. I personally want to set it on fire. But that's just me. I personally want to say, if you really want to do this, add a public option to what it is, to what's there now. Go ahead, step up to what the orange fuck said out of his mouth and convert to single payer. And let's catch up with the rest of the top-notch civilized planet. But that's just me sitting here in a room in front of a microphone. What's really out there is this plan, which, oddly enough, contains 6 pages about high-dollar lottery winners, and how they would have to cover their own insurance. Now think about that. 6 pages in a 60-page document. That's 10%. You're focusing 10% of very major, very significant legislation on rare situations because there was a glitch in the system or some error, or however it came to be. A woman wins $3 million while still collecting food stamps and things. These things take time to resolve. But no, they throw that in there to all kinds of extent. They throw in there getting rid of the individual mandate, meaning, you're not required to buy health insurance anymore, which to me is a bit of a problem. As someone who even participates through the exchange, my premium's through the roof, but overall I'm in good condition. No real clogging of arteries, blood pressure normal, blood work comes back normal. I'm good to go. I eat right whenever I can. I get a lot more exercise. I do a lot more walking, lifting. Looking to go back to the gym when I can find a better one that I can afford, which will probably mean sacrificing a couple things so I could go to a place like Planet Fitness. I do that, I take care of myself. But as Paul Ryan himself said, and how insurance works, healthy people like myself pay for the sick. And that's what insurance is meant to do. Those where everything's fine, their premiums add into the days when it's not fine. And the insurance company has to pay out. That's the whole purpose. Now, instead of making it a requirement where millions of people are helped, you get rid of it, and then exchanging that for, if you get insurance, you'll get a tax credit. Fine. Wonderful. But you're doing it wrong. Yes, someone in their 20s making good amounts of money, in some cases twice as much as me, you give them a couple grand, you scratch that off, they can pay for health insurance, no problem. But if you have someone who's closer to retirement in their 50s and 60s, you give them more. You give them $4 grand. In some cases, if they're lucky, they're paying $6. Most cases, they're paying $10. Where are they going to come up with that other $6 grand? Especially they're on a fixed income making 30, 40, 50 grand a year. How are they going to be able to afford it? Are you just going to create the death panels that you talked about in 2009? Create this death spiral instead of forcing more reality TV spin-offs about white trash in front of us? Is this what you really want to do? Is this how you're going to control the population? What's your deal? You really think that people are going to accept this because your millionaire and billionaire friends will pay a little less taxes? You get a tax break from insurance. You get tremendous tax breaks to the tune of potentially millions of dollars if you decide to get rid of the alternative minimum tax, which is on the table. What about us? Does this not further prove that you don't care about what people like me, my friends, my colleagues, everybody who, if it's not for putting our dollars into pockets, buying your products, staying at your places, doing all of these things, you get nothing out of it? Because that's what's really going to happen. Our spending drives your economy. It's not our collective economy if you really think about it, because if it was our collective economy, we would have more of a say-so. But you can thank Reagan for all of the money rising to the top. And this is what happens. You make these promises for coal miners, yet you give them nothing but maybe a couple of jobs, tremendous amounts of pollution, and when it comes time to pay out for that black lung, you're just going to say, no thanks. We'll be at your funeral. The more I see people standing up about it, the more I feel proud. The more I want to stand up, the more I want to make my voice known. As someone through you, like I said, I'm through the exchange. It helps me. I get everything laid out. Yes, my premiums are a bit pricey, but so be it. Unless they create an option, anything resembling Medicare for all, anything resembling single payer, this is where we can start from and try to fix. Because let's face it, even Nixon presented something like the ACA back in '71. Mitt Romney had something similar to this in Massachusetts, and it worked outside of lacking measures of cost control. So everything we get, a lot of it comes from those on the right, and you're going to get more and more of your plans being pushed to the right. Your single payer, your Medicare for all, those can easily be done, but when you have quotes of conservative radio show hosts and conservative TV show hosts talking about stamping out leftists, a leftist idea like that will never be enacted, won't even be thought of, despite the fact that it would be wildly accepted, cost-effective, and other countries would finally say, hey, about damn time you joined the party. Sit your ass down and have a beer. We need to talk. Nah. We turn off our phones. We say, we're busy. We're not feeling well. We're just gonna stay in tonight in the hopes of some twisted version of Netflix and chill, which doesn't come, and we wind up falling asleep on the couch, drooling all over ourselves. Waking up the next morning, feeling all kinds of different ways, just wondering how the fuck did this happen? Waking up disheveled, wiping the Cheeto dust off your shirt, going to the fridge for a Bloody Mary or other hair of the dog, or scrounging around looking for breakfast. It's where we are. All these other countries, they're out having a blast. You see them on Snapchat, you see them on Facebook, you see them tweeting, having a great time. Yeah, we go ahead and help them if they're in trouble, but we don't want to join in on their ideals. We don't want to join in on their fun. At least they will wake up hungover. They can call on each other. They got their aspirin, they got their water. Things for them are okay. They can go right back to work, talking at the water cooler about all the awesomeness that happened. And here we are, stuck, trying to scratch out whatever little extra power we can because we really think we're the boss. Which, if you look at the numbers, we're not. And it'll be high time before we will be again. Alright, well, enough of the gravity. Let me oppose this with some levity, since everybody's been out there and doing a good job. It is that time of year, it is March Madness, and, well, I decided, once I got the call about a bracket challenge, once I realized that my beloved Hurricanes did a little bit better than I expected in the seeding, I had them, after their loss in the ACC tournament as a 9, they're in as an 8. I thought, why not? Let me go ahead and try my hand one more time at filling out a bracket. Now, granted, I know that a lot of times I'm like everybody else. I'm vulnerable to the bust. I'm vulnerable to the upset. And just like almost every bracket, except a few years ago, this one autistic kid who was completely perfect through the Sweet 16 and did remarkably well, all of our brackets are vulnerable. So was mine. But I'm giving it some shots, putting it a little bit of sense, calling some upsets, and I'll go through bit by bit. Starting in the South region, I pretty much went all chalk in the first round. I do have Kansas State beating Cincinnati. I got Wichita State beating Dayton in the first round. Other than that, the favorites win. I'm not going terribly brave, except when it comes to the South Regional semifinal, I've got North Carolina beating Butler, and I've got UCLA beating Wichita State. Trust me, this Wichita State team got screwed over in the seedings, and I think this year, if anything, with their win streak, they're going to prove a thing or two. Nevertheless, UCLA wins out. They go to the Final Four. In the West, I've also got chalk for the most part, except another little surprise. The most vulnerable upset in any NCAA tournament is the 5 losing to the 12. It used to happen annually, at least once. Now it happens mostly annually. And I got it happening this time. I've got Princeton representing the Ivy League, winning the first ever Ivy League Conference tournament, which is about goddamn time. I've got them beating Notre Dame. Granted, no anti-Notre Dame bias here. I think they're the sneaky team. So sneaky that the fact that I have them also going to the Sweet 16. But for the rest of it, and yes, I also threw Florida Gulf Coast a bone, beating Florida State. One part their history and what they were able to do as a 15 seed, one part because fuck the Seminoles. Just saying. But at the end of that bracket, it winds up chalk. Gonzaga beats Arizona to go to the Final Four. The East is where I pretty much have the most chalk. The only difference is I have Virginia beating the Gators in the second round. I've got SMU in an upset over Baylor, getting to the Sweet 16. But at the end, it would be hard to stop Nova and Duke. And I've got the defending champs also going to the Final Four. For the Midwest bracket, again, mostly chalk. My upsets would, if you would call them upsets, would happen in the second round. Creighton beating Oregon, Michigan beating Louisville, Creighton beating Michigan, but eventually losing to Kansas in the Elite Eight simply because Kansas. And yes, I even have them beating my Canes. I didn't want to do it, but so be it. I also have them, instead of beating Purdue, beating Ohio State in the Sweet 16. So, my Final Four, following a bit of conventional wisdom, only once have all 4 number 1 seeds made it. this is following another one of those years that don't. Villanova, Gonzaga, Kansas, UCLA. And honestly, thanks to Lorenzo Ball, I've got UCLA as a 3 seed beating Gonzaga in the title game. And even throwing out a score 60-53. Something about this UCLA team, something about this Gonzaga team is just too special, and I think Villanova is going to come tantalizingly close to going back-to-back, but I just don't see it happening. Alas, and it also is a side note, no seed lower than a 6 has ever won the NCAA tournament. That 6 seed was Villanova playing the perfect game, beating Georgetown, the 1 seed who came closest to losing to a 16, Princeton, 50-49. And that was when the tournament first expanded to 64 teams in 85. Little tidbits to help you along your way. That's my bracket. I'd be curious to hear about yours, and trust me, you will be seeing a lot of angry tweets from me over the next couple of days. But alas, that's the end of my show, so I hope I've given you that sort of, feeling, and you don't want to smack me too much. Stay tuned as you'll hear my voice around the W2M network much more often. Got the big 2017 AFL season preview coming up on the 30th, so stay tuned for that on This Week in the AFL. Follow at This Week in AFL on Twitter. You can also hear me Sunday nights talking about everything American soccer, CONCACAF Champions League, MLS, men's, women's national team with at the McCrieger herself, Rachel McCrieger, and my equally awesome producer Sean at W2M Sean. We're on Soccer to the Max. You can follow me at Squid Sportshead, and you can follow our wonderful co-host and send her your well wishes at SakuraSteph_309 on Twitter. Saki herself, and you can find all of her various media as she's quite around on the interwebs. So, yes, tune in. So long, goodbye, good night, good luck. Always do your homework, and don't you ever forget to be awesome.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.